Good morning and welcome to EPM Live, Labor Cost Planning in EPM Live. My name is Marianne Uribe and I'm here with Christina Gully. Today we're going to focus on labor cost planning. We're going to provide an overview of the labor cost planning possibilities in EPM Live. EPM Live cost management capabilities are flexible and easy to use at both the summary level and detailed level. A key distinction between planning costs at the detail level or summary level is the visibility of budgets and actuals broken down by labor roles. Whichever cost planning approach you choose to use, EPM Live provides for flexibility. So today's topics, we're going to cover the benefits and use cases. Then we'll jump in and have Christina show you the configuration, and I'll show you the use, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. EPM Live offers a variety of cost planning tools. These include the planner, analyzer, and the modeler. These tools help organizations gain clear visibility into proposed as well as active initiatives. Configurable cost categories such as labor, hardware, software, overhead, and contingency make for easy planning of your project budgets. And with an EPM Live's cost reporting and dashboards, you can easily analyze vital cost data, both out of the box and with customized views, graphs, and reports. Real-time access to cost information increases responsiveness and promotes project success. For today, we're focusing on a specific area of cost planning, and that is our labor cost planning. Project stages typically include create, select, plan, manage, and close. Cost planning falls into the beginning, middle, and end of a project. In any project, cyclical planning is involved so that you are able to view current and past forecasting as well as visually see what's happening right now. So again, we're focusing on two types of planning: cost planning at the cost category level, where users would enter cost directly, and cost planning at the cost category role level, where users enter units of measure, which are hours, and then based on each role and that rate, the cost would auto-calculate. Let's talk about some of the benefits and use cases for both. Planning at the cost category level does not require the details of individual roles or quantity of hours to complete the initiative. This type of planning is focused more on the monetary amount rather than the time. Organizations who plan their labor budgets do so with labor as the total sum of costs. Additionally, this may include breaking it down into multiple labor buckets, such as capitalized labor and/or operational labor, as seen here within this example. So in this example, we can see how a project manager entered the budget amount of a project, here for example, close to $25,000, and it's spread over capitalized labor and operational labor. In the cost analyzer, we can see both what was budgeted and what was actually spent across the entire portfolio, not just for one project. For example, here in June, the labor was close to $19,000, capitalized labor. And the heat map displayed shows us how we did, or at least shows us that we did all right as far as our budget and capitalized labor. However, we were over in our budget here for labor. This slide is presented here and saved for you for your future reference as far as for benefits and use case planning at the cost category level. Here, planning at the cost category role level allows for detailed cost tracking. Costs are broken down for each type of resource based on their roles. Costs are calculated based on the estimated labor effort at the associated rate. This type of planning is more focused on time, which is then derives the cost. So here we enter our quantity of hours and the costs are calculated. Organizations who use this type of planning do so as they need visibility of their budgets and actuals broken down by labor roles. This may be in accordance with contracts or service agreements that specify a contracted quantity of time to be spent by the resources involved. So here again, users wouldn't enter cost directly, but rather would enter the unit of measure, which is hours. And then based on each role's rate, the cost would auto-calculate. Notice here in our cost analyzer how the cost category role level looks different. It's broken down by individual roles here. Again, this slide is saved here for your future reference regarding the planning at the cost category role level. Now I'm going to jump into a site and demonstrate how this looks in two different site collections. I've got two different sites here. Here I've got Tory Systems, Inc., and I'm logged in as a project manager in the upper right-hand corner. Notice here I'm in the Project Center, and I've got this project item, HR Upgrade, and I want to edit the cost, and I can use the Cost Planner to do so. So I'm going to select this project item. I can use the contextual drop-down menu, or I can use the ribbon to edit the cost. So I'm going to launch the Cost Planner. The Cost Planner allows you to build cost plans around projects. You can create budgets, enter actual costs, etc. Cost total values will be published into your project views and reports. And then from there, you can use your cost analyzer or modeler to compare and analyze costs and the data. Heat map reports are available to easily see variances between your budgeted and your actual costs. So here I'm in the Cost Planner, and I'm going to just change my display from January on out. I created this budget for this HR Upgrade project. So I put in some budgeted amount based off of capitalized labor and this one bucket labor here under operational. So I've got to the right here about $102,000 for my labor and $4,000 for capitalized labor. This was in my budgeted amount. We also have other cost types such as actual costs, benefits, resource plan, and timesheet actual. So we're in April. So I've entered 6 months here. I'm going to click on my actual tab. And it's in the actuals here, we're up to April, that I have perhaps received some data from maybe the accounting department, which I can actually put in the real numbers. So I've got my real numbers, my actual cost, versus my budgeted data. And I can compare the two using the show reference. So here I've got on the top, I've got my budget, or perhaps I want to look at actuals on top, and display my budget down below in read-only down below, and here's where I can edit this. Again, broken down by labor or contract labor under operational and capitalized labor on the top. So let's take a look at this within the cost analyzer and how it looks. I'm going to go ahead and close. And here I'm back in the project center. I'm going to select all my projects, and I want to see how we're doing on these projects. I'm going to launch the cost analyzer from the ribbon. So here in the cost analyzer, you can do a little bit of slicing and dicing of the information or the data that's presented for you. So I'm going to change my view here. I'm going to change on the view. Notice here I've got my budget. First I'm going to change my display periods. I want to go from January, and maybe I want to go out to October. And here I'll click OK. So this is going to change the months that I can see, all the way January to October. And then I'm going to change the view. So now I'm looking at the budget numbers here. I'm going to change it to, I want to compare my budgets versus my actual. I could also select actuals for benefits or resource plan or timesheet actuals. But for this demonstration, I'm going to select budget versus actual cost. Now what's happened here, these numbers here are actual numbers, both in the top and in the bottom. So I've got my totals down here. These are the totals for all of these projects up on top. So you'll notice I don't have anything in January for Upgrade or SuperTech. But out until April, it starts to collect for each additional project here. So if I expand these, here I can see for equipment in January, I have $6,000. If I collapse that and expand this, I can see that there are 0 values for equipment. So that $6,000 under equipment is the same number as down here. So whatever's selected up here will render down here as a total. If I deselect a project that does have values on it, those values will be removed from below. So these are actual numbers displayed in the top and in the bottom. You'll notice that I'm comparing my data here, my budget. So I could use this compare totals. And if I wanted to display actuals and view my budget, I could switch that around as well, simply by selecting from the compare totals button. So here's my cost analyzer. I'm going to close out of is project. And I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who will explain the configuration side. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, Marianne. Hello, everybody. I'm Christina Gully. And I'll switch over to an environment. It's the same site collection, but I'm now logged in as a site collection administrator. So the use case that Marianne was just demonstrating, how to plan your costs, both your budgeted and your actuals, at the cost category level, I'll now demonstrate how to make that configuration within your site collection. So to begin, I'll go to my settings gear here in the bottom left corner. And then under my cost management heading, I'll expand that. And then I'll go to cost categories. Here I see all the cost categories that exist within my site collection. So these are the cost categories that are available for my users to do their cost planning. Here under my capital heading, I see that I have capitalized labor. Also under operational, I have both labor and contract labor. Now, if any of these need to be edited or removed, or perhaps you need to add a new cost category, you can do so. All you would do is select the one that you want to remove and click delete. Or perhaps I want to create another cost category here. Perhaps under capitalized labor, if I select that and click add, it creates a new row for me. And I could fill in the type of cost category that I want that to be. And then again, if I don't want it, or if I've made a mistake, I could always click delete. Now, one thing to notice here is that I do have my other cost category roles showing down below. And these exist as roles for planning for our resource management. Though in this scenario, we're not necessarily using those roles for cost management. And I'll show you what I mean next. So here on this page, we have all of our cost categories. Next, I'll show you where we can apply which cost categories we want to use and when. And that's done in the cost types page. So still under my cost management heading, I can go to cost types. Now, before I navigate away, if I've made any changes here, I want to be sure to save. And then when ready, I go down to my cost types page. Now, these should look a bit familiar. These are the same cost types that Marianne was just showing when she opened up her cost planner. She had her budget, her actual costs, benefits, resource plan, and timesheet actuals in use. So here's where you can modify the cost types that are in use and how you want data to display for your users to do their cost planning. So first I'll select my budget cost type, and I'll click Modify. Here I have the name of the cost type, and then how this cost type will be created and maintained. Notice that it's editable. That means that the user can directly enter value or type in the numbers for that cost type. And down below is where I select which cost categories I want to use for this budget cost type. For example, under my capital, notice that I have capitalized labor selected. And if I scroll down a little ways, under operational, I also have labor and contract labor selected. That's why when Marianne went into her cost planner and was on the budget cost type tab, she could see these cost categories and she could enter values for them. And if I scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see that some cost categories are not in use here. For example, under labor, I have my different roles, and I'm not using these in this scenario. So you'll see that they're unchecked or they're not selected. So now if you make any changes here, you can make your changes selecting or deselecting. You go through the different cost categories and confirm which ones you do or don't want to use. And then once you're done, if you've made any changes, you can click Save. Or since I'm not making any changes here, I'm just showing the configuration, I can go ahead and click the X to close out of this cost type. Next, I'll go into my actual cost, and we'll also confirm the configuration there. So you want to make sure you do this verification or modifying of your cost categories within each of the cost types as applicable. So for actual costs, I select Modify. And then again, under my cost categories, notice I have my capitalized labor, as well as both my operational labor and operational contract labor are selected. And then again, my roles at the very bottom are not selected. So again, for actuals, just as Marianne showed, we enter the cost directly at the general labor buckets or capitalized labor as example. And if you had created any additional cost categories, you'd be able to make sure that you select those here so that those are then usable and visible within the cost planner. So again, I haven't made any changes here, so I'll go ahead and close out of this window. And so those are the types of steps you would take for each of the cost types when you're doing your planning at the cost category level. First, you want to make sure the cost categories exist on the cost categories page, and then you want to select which cost categories will be used for the different cost types. Now, just because we're doing our budgeting and our actual costs at the cost category level, you can still perhaps plan and look at maybe your resource plan or your timesheet actuals at the cost category role level. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be a blend. For example, if I look at my timesheet actuals as a cost type, and I'll click on Modify, here I see that the timesheet actuals cost type is populated from the timesheets. And if I scroll down here under my cost category section, I can see I have under labor, I have my different roles. And here I can select that I want all of my different cost category roles to show in the timesheet actuals. And so I'm just going to tab through here to make sure I verify all the different cost categories that I don't want showing for this timesheet actuals cost type. And then I'd be able to confirm that the labor are selected there. And then when I'm done, I could tab down to the bottom of the page and click Save. For now, I'll go ahead and close out of this window. Next, I'll turn it back over to Marianne, and she'll highlight the second scenario, which is cost planning at the cost category role level. Go ahead, Marianne.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, so now we're going to jump into another site, and this is Soul Research, and again, I'm logged in as a project manager. And I've got this project iBox 429, and I want to look at the cost planner just to show you the difference and how they look differently when we're planning our costs at the role level. So I'm going to go ahead and select this project. I'm in the Project Center. Again, I can use my ellipsis or the ribbon to launch the cost planner. This time I'm going to go ahead and use the ellipsis. Once I click the three dots here, I can scroll down and edit my costs. This launches the cost planner. Same tool, just a different way to launch it. Now you'll notice within this cost planner for this particular project and in this site, we have the cost labor broken down by role. So it's within this. I'm going to go ahead and change my view because I started this project back in January. And you'll notice the totals are totaled all the way to the right. But you'll notice within the quantity field, these are editable. So if I wanted to add or make any changes in any one of these, I simply type that number of hours, hit enter, and notice my total cost is auto-calculated as well as the sum to the right and the total on the top, because we're breaking the labor down by roles here. Same within my actuals as well. So I planned this out for 6 months, but in my actuals I came in and I put in just up until April or a little bit of May here. And if I made any changes, I could add them as I see fit here. So once I jump into May, once I start putting in hours here, what we actually spent, that will auto-calculate as well, and then sum it up to the right. Again, I can use my show reference to view how I was doing versus my actuals on top and my budget on bottom. Compare them within this view. Also, Christina was showing you earlier that how she added in another role. If there was another role to add, I'd simply select that labor, go to my categories, and it would be displayed here, such as analyst or portfolio manager. So I could add those in by simply checking the box and clicking add. And there are 2 more roles here that we added, and we can enter hours against them. Again, she was talking about resource plans. If you had a resource plan and it's broken down by roles, you could have that resource plan populate this cost planner and timesheet actuals as well. Now let's take a look at I made a change, so I'm going to save it, and then we'll take a look at the cost analyzer as well, just to show you how it looks. I'm going to close out of the cost planner. I'm in the project center. Once again, I'm going to select all the projects in the queue, and I'm going to launch the cost analyzer. And I could have used so we're in the cost analyzer now, and here I've got my January 2014 out to October here, September, October down below, and January below. So here I'm going to change my view. I'm going to click Change View. My periods and values are good. Here I've got my cost categories, and I can collapse or expand each one of these items. And for each project, this cost category equipment is broken down by month to the right. So I've got 3,000 in January for iBox. And then in Matrix, I don't have any. So these are all 0. So that 3,000 for iBox in equipment is going to show up down here, depending on what I put in here for categories. Here's my 3,000 down on the bottom. So here on the top, what do I want to look at? This is where I select what I'd like to look at. I could add or remove columns as well as sort. Underneath budget here of this current view, I'm going to choose, again, budget versus actual. I want to use that heat map to compare what we're looking at. I want to look at the actual numbers up on top. These are actuals here as well as here. Notice the comparison is budget. So I'm laying the heat map is the budget. If I want to know what those colors mean, I simply click on the legend, and it can tell me how I did. How did I do as far as what I actually spent and how I budgeted? Well, red tells me not so great. Anywhere in the green, I'm pretty good, and I'm slightly over in yellow. So these colors give me an indicator of how my budget versus my actuals are doing, as well as if I wanted to see what was remaining. If I click on Show Remaining, here I've got the difference. For my remaining, again, anywhere in the green, I did all right versus red, not so great. So that's how we can compare our actuals versus budgets using the cost analyzer. And again, we can use our compare totals to switch what it is, the numbers that we'd like to display, versus if I wanted to have my actuals be the heat map, I could choose to display my actuals and then show my budgets as well up on the top. So that's my cost analyzer. I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. And I'm going to pass it over to Christina.
All right, thanks, Marianne.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll toggle back into my other site here. And let me go ahead and go back to my home page. I'm no longer going to be on this site. I'm going to switch to a different site collection. So this Soul Research site where Marianne was just doing her cost planning for the iBox 429 project. And again, I'm logged into this environment as a site collection administrator. So just as Marianne was showing you how to do your cost planning and track your budgets as well as your actuals and do your comparisons down to the cost category role level. Now I'll show you how to configure that. So again, I'll begin by going to my settings here. But this time, I'll start first on our roles page. So every user, whether it's a role-based generic resource or whether it's an actual named user, every person and every resource that gets added into the resource pool has a primary role. So to configure those roles under the user management heading, I scroll down and I click on roles. This takes me to the roles page. Here I can see I have a number of roles in my organization. And to add a new role is very simple. You just click New. And it's a short form, just one field here for title. Let's say I want to add the role of DBA. And then click Save. Now any role that I add on the roles page will automatically get added to my cost categories page as a cost category role. So the first step is you add in the role on the roles page. Next, I'll go back to my cost categories page. Here on this second site, I expand cost management and then go to cost categories. Now here on my cost categories page, notice we see a lot of similar cost categories as we did before. So we still have some of these other cost categories on this site. If I know I'm not going to be using these, for example, I can always select them and delete them. So that way it can help reduce confusion later for yourself as the administrator to know exactly which cost categories should be used and which should not. Where I'm going to focus, however, is on the cost category roles. So if I scroll down to the bottom, notice under my labor heading, I now automatically have that DBA cost category role. And so here under the cost category roles is where I have all my labor cost categories in essence. And so where Marianne was entering her budget and her actuals down to the role level, that's because these cost category roles are here. Now an important step to this is entering the rates for those roles. Now in EPM Live, there are some basic capabilities as well. You can get more advanced in terms of calculating your rates and special exceptions and things along those lines. Today I'm going to focus on the standard role rates. For example, I select a role and then click the Rates button. And here I have the base rate. So for example, anytime that we're planning for a developer, the base rate will be $150. Now if I know that rate's going to change over a certain period in time, I can always add in additional rows here. For example, if I know that as of January 1st, the rate will increase, I could click the Add button and change this to my new effective date. Perhaps at the beginning of the year, January 1st, our rate will increase to $160. And so I could make that change and then click OK. And so I would go through and do this rate calculation for all of my different roles. So I have analyst, trainer, tester, etc. And they can have a base rate as well as a rate that might change over the course of time. So I have this new cost category role that I just entered, that DBA. So I want to make sure I enter the rate for this new cost category role. So I'll click on Rates, and I'll say we have the same standard base rate for that role as well. And then when I'm done, I click OK. So now here we have our unit of measure, and it's hours. So as Marianne was entering her cost plan for her budget as well as her actuals, she was entering in hours. And then it multiplied the number of hours by the rate that's entered here on this rates table, and that's what gave her her cost. So now we've entered in and modified our cost category roles. So we first entered the role itself. We came into the cost categories page here, and we verified and modified the rates for our cost category roles. And the next place we'll go, just as we did in our previous example, is to our cost types page. So now I've made some changes. I want to be sure to save them. And now that those are saved, I'll go to my cost types page. And again, we're focusing mainly on our budget and actual cost today, so I'll go into the same two cost types again. I'll click Budget and then Modify. And this time on my budget cost type, notice that capitalized labor is not selected. As well, labor and contract labor are not selected. Our other cost categories are, such as supplies, materials, other expenses, etc. And if I keep scrolling down towards the very bottom, under my labor cost category, I there see all my cost category roles. So this is what determines that when Marianne launched her cost planner and she went to the Budget Cost Type tab, she saw these cost category roles. And if I scroll to the very bottom, notice I created that new role, which populated it as a cost category role. And now it's listed here as available. So I want to make sure I select that. And so here I select that, and then I click Save, and then close out of here. That would make it then available for Marianne to also be budgeting perhaps for a DBA. Maybe they're going to bring on a DBA going forward, and they need to start planning for budgeting for that DBA on new projects. For now, I'll go ahead and click the X to close out this window. And then again, I would follow those same steps to be sure that that cost type, or excuse me, that cost category role, DBA, is also used with my actual cost type. So again, we see here our actual cost type is editable, meaning the data can be manually entered into the cost type in that cost planner. And again, I see capitalized labor is not selected, as well as I scroll down here under operational, labor and contract labor are also not selected, meaning they're not for use here. And you want to be very sure that you're not using both. You would not plan at both the cost category and cost category role level, because then basically you're doing duplicate entry. You want to make sure you're either choosing method 1, which we showed in the first site example, or this method 2, which we're showing here in this second example. And again, I would go down to my labor section, and these are those cost category roles. And here I can see, again, I have that DBA now available, and I'll select that checkbox, and then I would click Save to close out of this window. So that is how you configure your cost management at the cost category role level. You do your roles first in the roles page, then you go to your cost categories page to modify the cost category roles rates. It's very important that you enter in those rates so then the costs are calculated accordingly. And then you go into your cost types page where you can then be sure that those cost category roles are selected for use in the cost planner. Now I'll turn it back over to Marianne again.
Thanks, Christina. So today, I hope that you've seen that whichever cost planning approach you choose to use, EPM Live provides plenty of flexibility when it comes to cost planning. Now that we just covered the cost planning demonstration part of this Technical Tuesday, and before jumping into the Q&A portion, I'd like to introduce Upland University. Upland University is our new online learning management system where you and your team can easily access all of our end user and site collection administrator training for all of the EPM Live products. Here you can access all our user guides, self-paced courses, and even register for regularly instructor-led Q&A sessions. Upland University is available to all the customers who are part of our Premier Success program. To find out more about Upland University, please contact your account representative or reach out to us at EPM Live Training at uplandsoftware.com. Now we're going to open the floor to if anybody has any questions. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Go ahead and type into the chat window if you'd like to ask a question, and we'll have Christina or myself field those questions.
All right. So it looks like currently we don't have any questions yet, but again, if you expand your GoToWebinar panel there, you can type into the question window or into the chat window any questions that you may have, and we'll be sure to answer those.
While we're doing that, while we're waiting for some questions, I'm going to go ahead and display some information for today's Technical Tuesday as far as your PDU number, our training documentation link, and our contact email.
And as Marianne was saying, we do have our documentation link here as well. And the steps and instructions that we've used for how to do cost planning at the different types of whether cost category or cost category roles are available in our training guides. So please check those out if you're one of our customers or you're interested in becoming a customer and you want to see how you can follow those steps screenshot by screenshot or step by step.
Additionally, we've also added a slide here for you on instructions to claim your PDU. And you'll get a follow-up email with a recording of this so you can keep this for future reference.
Okay, so there was a question here about entering actuals at the enterprise level. So you can do tracking of your, whether it's your budget or your actuals, at any level that you prefer. So for example, we're doing our cost planning at the project level, but if you would prefer in your organization, you can do cost planning on, say, a portfolio level, whether you're entering a portfolio budget or the actual spend at the portfolio level. Another common example we see is at the department level. So you're perhaps doing your department level budget of how much you plan to spend from a labor perspective or from other types of cost tracking as well. So yes, you could do that. And the type of planning I had done here was enabling it within the Project Center, but you could enable your cost planning on other lists, for example, your portfolios list or your project departments list. Okay, there was a question again about entering roles. So the roles you enter in from your settings here, and you go to the page under User Management, and it's called Roles. And so when you go to that Roles page, you just click New, and then you enter in the name of your role and click Save. And then next time you go to your Cost Categories page, that role will already be showing there. So you can make sure you then go to your cost type and select that Roles checkbox. Now there's another question just to confirm, yes, this presentation is being recorded and will be made available following the webinar, so that'll be distributed to you. So you can watch the recording. And the PDU will be for 0.5 hours, as we've done instruction for about 30 minutes. Now currently there's a question about how to get actuals in with regards to import. At this current time with our current version of EPM Live, the actuals are entered in manually, but that is something that is being looked at for future release as well to have more automated imports available. Currently the actuals are entered in manually into the actual cost type. Okay, so that's all the questions we have so far. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and we'll give you another about 30 seconds or so. And then again, you have our contact information if you have additional questions, or you can also contact your account manager for more information about further training and whatnot as well. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and close out the Technical Tuesday. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. We hope you enjoyed learning about doing cost management and labor cost management with EPM Live. And we look forward to seeing you again on another Technical Tuesday coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. Have a great day. Thank you.